close your eyes for a moment and allow the noise of the present day to slowly fade away. The hum of engines, the glow of screens, the weight of modern hours, all of it softens little by little until another world begins to take shape around you. You find yourself standing at the edge of the medieval world in a time where stone walls rise higher than trees, where faith shapes every gesture, and where the night is truly dark. The air is cool. It carries the scent of dust, wax, leather, and distant smoke. Somewhere nearby, a bell rings, slow, deep, steady, marking the rhythm of a life governed not by clocks, but by prayer. Tonight, you're about to step into the life of a man who has chosen a rare and demanding path. A man who is neither fully monk nor entirely soldier. A man who has renounced wealth, family, and personal ambition to bind himself forever to an order both feared and revered. You're about to live as a Templar. You will feel the weight of the white mantle on your shoulders, the roughness of wool against your skin. You will sleep in shared silence, eat plain meals, rise before dawn, and kneel on cold stone floors. You will learn discipline, obedience, and restraint, not as abstract ideals, but as daily necessities. This is a world where faith is not a private matter, but a constant presence. God watches every step, every thought, every hesitation. You will train your body to endure fatigue and pain, and your mind to accept the possibility of death without fear. You will ride across long roads and restless seas, carrying both sword and prayer. You will discover brotherhood, quiet, unwavering, forged through shared hardship rather than words. But this life is not only made of battle and glory. It is filled with routine, silence, doubt, illness, aging, and memory. With moments of exhaustion and moments of calm so deep they feel almost timeless. As this journey unfolds, you will not simply observe the Templars from afar. You will inhabit their days and nights. You will breathe their world slowly, gently, as if you had always belonged to it. And as you listen, letting your thoughts drift, you may ask yourself, without urgency, without judgment, could you have lived this life? Could you have endured it? If this journey through time brings you comfort, consider subscribing to the channel so you may continue to fall asleep to history on future nights. You're also welcome to leave a quiet comment, sharing where you're listening from tonight, wherever in the world you may be. And if you wish, you can simply like the video as a small gesture of companionship before rest. Now breathe slowly, the torches flicker, the night deepens, and your life as a Templar begins. You're not born into the order, no man ever truly is. Your life begins far from banners and battlefields, in the slow and grounded rhythm of medieval days. You are born into a world where the earth matters, where the seasons decide hunger or abundance, where the horizon is narrow and yet filled with meaning. Stone houses, wooden doors, the smell of smoke clinging to clothing. This is the first world you know. As a child, you learn early that life is not soft. Cold seeps through walls in winter. Summer brings dust, sweat, and insects. Work begins at dawn and ends only when light fades. You hear the sounds of animals before you hear your own thoughts. You feel the roughness of cloth, the uneven ground beneath bare or worn shoes, the weight of fatigue long before you understand its name. Your family shapes you, not through words but through example. You watch your elders rise every morning without complaint. You see prayers whispered before meals, not out of habit, but out of necessity. God is not distant. He is present in the fields, in illness, in birth, in death. Faith is not debated. It surrounds you like air. If you are born to a noble household, even a modest one, Your body is trained for obedience early. You learn to sit still, to listen, to endure discomfort without protest. You're reminded that your name carries responsibility. You are not entirely your own. If you're born humbler, the lesson is the same, though taught differently. You learn that survival depends on discipline, that rebellion brings hunger, that order, even harsh order, is preferable to chaos. Little by little your childhood fades, and expectation takes its place. You hear stories. Stories told by priests, travellers, and tired men resting near hearths. Stories of Jerusalem, of pilgrims crossing seas and deserts, of knights who swear oaths not to a lord but to God himself. You hear of an order unlike others, men who do not marry, who do not own, who eat simply, sleep little, and fight fiercely. Men who wear white, not as a sign of purity, but as a reminder of the life they have surrendered. The Templars. At first they seem unreal, like saints or legends, too severe to belong to the same world as you. Who would willingly abandon land, comfort, lineage? Who would choose poverty when the world already offers so little? And yet the name stays with you. As you grow, the path laid before you feels uncertain. Perhaps you're not the eldest son. Perhaps inheritance will never be yours. Perhaps you feel, without knowing why, that the ordinary life awaiting you is too small for the weight inside your chest. You work, you train, you pray, but restlessness grows quietly. At night, lying beneath rough blankets, you stare into darkness and imagine a life stripped of choice, a life where obedience replaces doubt, where each day is defined not by personal desire, but by rule and purpose. The idea frightens you, and yet it comforts you. The world is dangerous. Bandits roam roads. War flares suddenly. Illness comes without warning. Death is familiar. Perhaps a life devoted entirely to God offers a form of certainty that ordinary life cannot. The thought matures slowly. It does not announce itself. It settles. You begin to listen more closely when priests speak of sacrifice. You notice how your heart reacts to words like duty, service, renunciation. You imagine yourself kneeling, head bowed, your will placed into the hands of something greater. Still, you hesitate. Joining the order means leaving behind your name as it is known. It means severing the future most men expect. Marriage, children, legacy. To become a Templar is to accept a form of living death, a death of the self, long before the body fails. The decision is not heroic, it is heavy. When you finally speak of it, the world around you changes tone. Some look at you with admiration, others with fear, some with sorrow. Your family listens in silence, understanding that this choice once made cannot be undone. You begin to prepare. You give away what little belongs to you. You simplify your possessions. You practice restraint, as if already testing yourself. You pray longer. You speak less. And when the day comes to leave, it feels strangely quiet. The road stretches ahead. Each step carries distance, not only from home, but from the person you have been until now. Fields pass, villages fade, familiar sounds disappear behind you. You walk forward, knowing that this journey does not lead to adventure, but to submission, and you continue. The place where you arrive is not what stories promised. There are no banners welcoming you, no ceremony, no sense of triumph, only walls of stone, worn by time, enclosing a life already in motion. Men move quietly, purposefully. They do not look at you with curiosity, but with careful attention. You are being measured, not for strength, not for courage, but for resolve. You stand among strangers who already belong to one another. Their gestures are restrained, their speech limited, their eyes steady. You sense immediately that this is a world where excess has no place. You're told to wait. Waiting becomes your first lesson. Hours pass, perhaps days. Time loses shape. You're given simple food, a place to sleep, instructions that are brief and final. You begin to understand that here, obedience is not discussed, it is assumed. When you are finally questioned, it is not as you imagined. They ask you why you wish to join. They ask if you are in debt, if you have promises elsewhere, if you flee justice, marriage, obligation. They do not want men escaping life. They want men willing to surrender it. You answer carefully, honestly. Your voice feels smaller than usual, as if the walls themselves absorb sound. You realize that there is no advantage in impressing anyone here. Full strength would be exposed quickly. You are warned. This life is harsh. There is no turning back. The rule will govern your days and nights. Your body, your time, your will, none will belong to you. They describe hunger, fatigue, silence, the absence of comfort, the certainty of danger, the possibility of death far from home, buried among brothers whose names the world will never remember. You listen. You do not interrupt. When they dismiss you again, you feel the weight of the threshold beneath your feet. You are neither inside nor outside, not yet accepted, not yet rejected. And in this waiting, something within you settles. You're no longer imagining the life. You are touching its edges. At last, the moment arrives. You're summoned. You kneel. Stone presses against your knees. The air feels cooler here, heavier. Words are spoken, not dramatic, not embellished, but final. You're asked one last time if this is your will, and you answer. What follows is simple, almost austere. There is no spectacle, no applause. Your former life is acknowledged, then gently closed, like a door that will never be opened again. You're no longer an individual seeking purpose. You're a man being absorbed into an order. Your clothing changes. Your appearance is stripped of ornament. You begin to look like the others, not identical, but equal. You feel the loss of distinction, and with it, a strange relief. You are given instructions, rules, limits. They are not explained. Explanation is unnecessary. That night, you lie among other men in silence. The sound of breathing fills the space. No one speaks. No one needs to. You stare into darkness, aware that the world you knew is already fading, replaced by something narrower, stricter, and deeper. Fear arises, quietly. Fear of failing, fear of weakness, fear of doubt. But beneath it lies something steadier. Acceptance. You understand now that becoming a Templar is not an act completed in a day. It is a process that will continue as long as you live. Each morning will require the same surrender. Each night will test your resolve again. As sleep slowly claims you, you feel the weight of the choice you have made. It presses upon you, not as regret, but as gravity. You have stepped out of the ordinary flow of life. You belong to the Order now, and there is no return. You're not born into the Order. No man ever truly is. Your life begins far from banners and battlefields, in the slow and grounded rhythm of medieval days. You are born into a world where the earth matters, where the seasons decide hunger or abundance, where the horizon is narrow and yet filled with meaning. Stone houses, wooden doors, the smell of smoke clinging to clothing. This is the first world you know. As a child, you learn early that life is not soft. Cold seeps through walls in winter. Summer brings dust, sweat, and insects. Work begins at dawn and ends only when light fades. You hear the sounds of animals before you hear your own thoughts. You feel the roughness of cloth, the uneven ground beneath bare or worn shoes, the weight of fatigue long before you understand its name. Your family shapes you, not through words but through example. You watch your elders rise every morning without complaint. You see prayers whispered before meals, not out of habit, but out of necessity. God is not distant. He is present in the fields, in illness, in birth, in death. Faith is not debated. It surrounds you like air. If you are born to a noble household, even a modest one, your body is trained for obedience early. You learn to sit still, to listen, to endure discomfort without protest. You're reminded that your name carries responsibility. You are not entirely your own. If you're born humbler, the lesson is the same, though taught differently. You learn that survival depends on discipline, that rebellion brings hunger, that order, even harsh order, is preferable to chaos. Little by little your childhood fades, and expectation takes its place. You hear stories told by priests, travellers, and tired men resting near hearths. Stories of Jerusalem, of pilgrims crossing seas and deserts, of knights who swear oaths not to a lord but to God himself. You hear of an order unlike others, men who do not marry, who do not own, who eat simply, sleep little, and fight fiercely. Men who wear white, not as a sign of purity, but as a reminder of the life they have surrendered. The Templars. At first they seem unreal, like saints or legends, too severe to belong to the same world as you. Who would willingly abandon land, comfort, lineage? Who would choose poverty when the world already offers so little? And yet the name stays with you. As you grow, the path laid before you feels uncertain. Perhaps you're not the eldest son. Perhaps inheritance will never be yours. Perhaps you feel, without knowing why, that the ordinary life awaiting you is too small for the weight inside your chest. You work, you train, you pray, but restlessness grows quietly. At night, lying beneath rough blankets, you stare into darkness and imagine a life stripped of choice, a life where obedience replaces doubt, where each day is defined not by personal desire, but by rule and purpose. The idea frightens you, and yet it comforts you. The world is dangerous. Bandits roam roads. War flares suddenly. Illness comes without warning. Death is familiar. Perhaps a life devoted entirely to God offers a form of certainty that ordinary life cannot. The thought matures slowly. It does not announce itself. It settles. You begin to listen more closely when priests speak of sacrifice. You notice how your heart reacts to words like duty, service, renunciation. You imagine yourself kneeling, head bowed, your will placed into the hands of something greater. Still, you hesitate. Joining the order means leaving behind your name as it is known. It means severing the future most men expect. Marriage, children, legacy. To become a Templar is to accept a form of living death, a death of the self long before the body fails. The decision is not heroic, it is heavy. When you finally speak of it, the world around you changes tone. Some look at you with admiration, others with fear, some with sorrow. Your family listens in silence, understanding that this choice once made cannot be undone. You begin to prepare. You give away what little belongs to you. You simplify your possessions. You practice restraint, as if already testing yourself. You pray longer. You speak less. And when the day comes to leave, it feels strangely quiet. The road stretches ahead. Each step carries distance, not only from home, but from the person you have been until now. Fields pass, villages fade, familiar sounds disappear behind you. You walk forward, knowing that this journey does not lead to adventure, but to submission, and you continue. The place where you arrive is not what stories promised. There are no banners welcoming you, no ceremony, no sense of triumph, only walls of stone, worn by time, enclosing a life already in motion. Men move quietly, purposefully. They do not look at you with curiosity, but with careful attention. You are being measured, not for strength, not for courage, but for resolve. You stand among strangers who already belong to one another. Their gestures are restrained, their speech limited, their eyes steady. You sense immediately that this is a world where excess has no place. You're told to wait. Waiting becomes your first lesson. Hours pass, perhaps days. Time loses shape. You're given simple food, a place to sleep, instructions that are brief and final. You begin to understand that here, obedience is not discussed, it is assumed. When you are finally questioned, it is not as you imagined. They ask you why you wish to join. They ask if you are in debt, if you have promises elsewhere, if you flee justice, marriage, obligation. They do not want men escaping life. They want men willing to surrender it. You answer carefully, honestly. Your voice feels smaller than usual, as if the walls themselves absorb sound. You realize that there is no advantage in impressing anyone here. Full strength would be exposed quickly. You are warned. This life is harsh. There is no turning back. The rule will govern your days and nights. Your body, your time, your will, none will belong to you. They describe hunger, fatigue, silence, the absence of comfort, the certainty of danger, the possibility of death far from home, buried among brothers whose names the world will never remember. You listen. You do not interrupt. When they dismiss you again, you feel the weight of the threshold beneath your feet. You are neither inside nor outside, not yet accepted, not yet rejected. And in this waiting, something within you settles. You are no longer imagining the life. You are touching its edges. At last, the moment arrives. You're summoned. You kneel. Stone presses against your knees. The air feels cooler here, heavier. Words are spoken, not dramatic, not embellished, but final. You are asked one last time if this is your will, and you answer. What follows is simple, almost austere. There is no spectacle, no applause. Your former life is acknowledged, then gently closed, like a door that will never be opened again. You're no longer an individual seeking purpose. You're a man being absorbed into an order. Your clothing changes. Your appearance is stripped of ornament. You begin to look like the others, not identical, but equal. You feel the loss of distinction, and with it, a strange relief. You are given instructions, rules, limits. They are not explained. Explanation is unnecessary. That night, you lie among other men in silence. The sound of breathing fills the space. No one speaks. No one needs to. You stare into darkness, aware that the world you knew is already fading, replaced by something narrower, stricter, and deeper. Fear arises, quietly. Fear of failing, fear of weakness, fear of doubt. But beneath it lies something steadier. Acceptance. You understand now that becoming a Templar is not an act completed in a day. It is a process that will continue as long as you live. Each morning will require the same surrender. Each night will test your resolve again. As sleep slowly claims you, you feel the weight of the choice you have made. It presses upon you, not as regret, but as gravity. You have stepped out of the ordinary flow of life. You belong to the Order now, and there is no return. Once the vows are spoken, the rule begins to reveal its true weight. Not all at once, not violently, but persistently. like a presence that never leaves your side. The rule is not merely a book or a list of commands. It is the invisible structure holding your days together. It tells you when to wake, when to eat, when to pray, when to work, when to rest. It decides how much you speak, how you dress, how you move your body in the presence of others. Even your silence is regulated. You begin to notice how time changes. The day no longer belongs to you. It is divided into hours marked by prayer, not by the sun's position or personal fatigue. Bells call you before you are ready. They interrupt sleep, labour, thought. You do not question them. You rise because the rule demands it. Before dawn you leave your bed. The dormitory is cold, filled with the slow movements of other men rising without complaint. No one lingers. No one stretches excessively. Even the body learns restraint. Prayer comes first. You stand or kneel in dim light, your mind still heavy with sleep. Psalms are spoken in unison, their rhythm steady, ancient, grounding. Some mornings your thoughts wander. You catch yourself thinking of warmth, of rest, of the life you left behind. Each time you pull yourself back, gently but firmly. Discipline begins in the mind. After prayer comes labour, not chosen but assigned. You may clean stables, repair walls, tend animals, carry supplies. The tasks are repetitive, often exhausting. They are not meant to fulfill you. They are meant to empty you. You learn quickly that effort is expected but display is not. Pride in work is discouraged. You labour not to stand out but to serve. Praise is rare. Correction is common. And slowly you stop craving recognition. Silence governs much of the day. At meals, words are limited or forbidden entirely. You eat what is placed before you, slowly, attentively. The food is plain. Bread, legumes, sometimes vegetables. Meat appears only on certain days, and even then without excess. Hunger becomes familiar but never unbearable. It sharpens awareness. It humbles. A brother may read aloud from scripture or the rule while you eat. His voice is calm, measured. You listen while chewing, absorbing words meant to shape your inner life as much as your outer behaviour. The rule extends to the smallest gestures. You're taught how to walk without haste, how to sit without slouching, how to lower your eyes, how to address superiors, how to correct equals, how to accept correction yourself, immediately without resentment. Even sleep is regulated. You sleep clothed, ready to rise at a moment's notice. Your bed is simple, no personal objects surround you. Darkness is shared. Breathing fills the space. The presence of others is constant, leaving little room for private thought. At first, this closeness feels oppressive. You miss solitude, you miss choice, you miss the illusion of control over your own body and time, but the rule does not bend to discomfort. Days pass, then weeks, then months. Slowly, something within you begins to change. You notice that decisions no longer burden you as they once did. What to wear, when to eat, how to act. All of this has been decided already. The mental weight of choice lifts. In its place comes routine. And within routine a strange calm. You still feel fatigue, you still feel doubt, but they no longer dominate. The rule catches you when your will falters. It carries you forward when motivation fades. You begin to understand that the rule is not designed to punish the body. It is designed to break the tyranny of the self. As time deepens, the rule becomes less an external force and more an internal voice. You no longer need to be reminded constantly. Your body begins to anticipate the bell. Your hands move automatically during prayer. Your steps follow familiar paths without conscious thought. The discipline that once felt imposed now feels ingrained. This is not freedom, but it is stability. You observe older brothers closely, men whose hair has thinned, whose faces are marked by years of sun and strain. They move with quiet confidence, rarely speaking, rarely hesitating. The rule lives in them effortlessly. You realize that this is what years of obedience produce. Not rigidity, but steadiness. Yet the rule is not gentle. It allows no exceptions for mood, for fatigue, for personal sorrow. If you are ill, you are cared for, but even illness follows structure. If you are injured, your recovery is supervised, disciplined, purposeful. Self-pity finds no space to grow. Correction remains constant. A misplaced word, a wandering gaze, a moment of unnecessary comfort. Each is addressed quickly, sometimes publicly, sometimes quietly, never cruelly, but always firmly. You learn that correction is not humiliation here. It is maintenance, like sharpening a blade before it dulls completely. Obedience becomes the central struggle, not obedience in grand matters, and those are rare, but obedience in small things, rising when you wish to sleep, eating when you wish to fast, fasting when you wish to eat, speaking when ordered, remaining silent when you wish to explain yourself. These small obediences grind down resistance slowly. There are days when resentment flickers, when you feel invisible, when you wonder if your life has been reduced too far, narrowed too tightly. On those days, prayer feels heavy, labor endless, silence suffocating. The rule does not soften, instead it waits, and eventually the resentment passes, leaving behind a quieter understanding that the rule does not exist to comfort you, but to shape you into something precise and dependable. You begin to see its deeper purpose. In battle, hesitation kills. In fear, discipline steadies. In chaos, routine preserves order. The rule is preparing you, not only for war but for endurance. Night after night you lie among your brothers, listening to the same sounds, breathing, shifting bodies, the distant creak of stone. You realize that your private inner world has grown smaller but clearer. Your thoughts are fewer, your desires simpler, your sense of self quieter. You're still an individual but no longer the center of your existence. And slowly, without announcement, peace enters, not happiness and not joy, but a deep, steady acceptance. You no longer fight the structure of your days, you move within it, carried by it. The rule has become a framework strong enough to hold fear, doubt, and fatigue without collapsing. You understand now why the rule must be absolute, because only something unyielding can support a life that demands everything. As sleep comes, you feel no need to plan tomorrow. Tomorrow has already been decided, and in that certainty your mind finally rests. The rule surrounds you, not as a chain, but as a wall, and within its narrow confines your life continues, steady and contained, ready for whatever trials await beyond these stones. You come to know the Commandery the way you come to know a landscape in fog, not all at once, not with sudden clarity, but through repeated steps, through the same turns taken again and again, through the way your body begins to anticipate each threshold before your eyes even name it. From the outside, the place seems severe, a block of stone set against fields, orchards, or a dusty road, depending on where you are in Christendom. The walls do not invite, they resist. They stand as if they have been placed there to endure time itself. The gate is thick, reinforced, meant to hold against force and impatience alike. There are few openings. Windows are narrow, set deep into the masonry, more like slits than welcoming eyes. In the early morning, when mist hangs low and the world feels muted, The Commandery can appear almost unreal, like a ship at anchor on a grey sea. But once you're inside, you understand that it is not emptiness that lives here. It is order. The first thing you notice is the temperature. Stone keeps the night. Even when the sun climbs and the air outside warms, a coolness lingers in corridors and rooms, a steady chill that touches your skin and reminds you that comfort is not the goal here. In winter, the cold is sharper, a slow bite that enters through the soles of your feet and settles in your fingers. In summer, the same stone becomes a kind of mercy, holding the heat at bay, making shadows feel deep and almost tender. Then there are the sounds. Your steps echo, not loudly but clearly, each footfall answered by the walls. Doors creak with familiar voices. Iron rings against iron, a latch, a buckle, a hinge. Somewhere a horse stamps, impatient, and the sound travels through the yard like a brief drumbeat. You hear water poured into basins, a wooden bucket set down, a broom dragged across stone. You begin to realize that even silence here has texture. It is not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of men who've agreed to hold their tongues, to let only what is necessary rise into the air. The commandery has a scent that becomes part of you. Wax from the chapel candles, smoke from the kitchen hearth, leather from tack and belts, wool damp with sweat after training, dust ground fine by footsteps, sometimes the faint sharpness of vinegar used for cleaning, or the earthy sweetness of stored grain. In the stables the smell thickens, warm animal breath, hay, manure, and the oily tang of harness, and always, under everything, the smell of old stone, slightly mineral, as if the building itself breathes. You learn the spaces in a slow procession, as if the day is teaching you with its own hands. The chapel is the heart, and you feel that without being told. It is not necessarily grand, but it is central. Its stones feel older than the rest, worn smooth where so many knees have pressed. Light here is different, softer, filtered, trembling in candle flames that refuse to stay still. When you enter, your voice seems to shrink before it can form, as though the air itself insists on humility. The altar is simple, the symbols direct, the cross always there to gather your eyes. You smell wax and cold and something faintly metallic from the candle holders. You taste the dryness of long prayers. You learn to breathe quietly here, to let your breathing join the breathing of the order. From the chapel you move outward into the places where the body is maintained. The dormitory is long and shared, and at first it unsettles you more than you expect. Beds in a line, close enough that a man's restless movement can be felt by others. No bright cloth, no personal objects, no carved tokens of home. The sameness is deliberate. It tells you, without a single word, that you're not here to cultivate individuality. The blankets are rough. The straw mattress holds a faint smell of dryness and old sweat. At night the room fills with the quiet chorus of bodies, the shift of a shoulder, the soft scrape of a boot removed, a cough swallowed quickly. You become used to falling asleep not in private darkness, but in a darkness shared, held together by the mutual decision not to speak. You notice the small rules even here. How you place your clothing, how you keep your belt ready, how you do not sprawl, how you rise quickly when the bell calls. Sleep is permitted, but it is never allowed to become a pleasure. Rest is taken as one takes bread, gratefully, without indulgence, and without demanding more. The refectory teaches you another kind of discipline. It is a room of wood and stone, tables worn by elbows and bowls, benches polished by years of use. Food arrives plain and steady, designed to sustain rather than delight. bread that is dense and heavy in the hand, broth that smells of onions or herbs when the kitchen can afford them, sometimes thin, sometimes richer, depending on the season and the stores. Legumes, cabbage, perhaps a bit of cheese. Meat appears rarely, and when it does, it is not celebrated. You eat because the body must continue. Silence sits at the table with you. The scraping of spoons sounds louder than it would anywhere else. The swallow of water, the quiet clearing of throats. Often a brother reads aloud while you eat. A passage from scripture, a lesson from the rule, a story of saints and endurance. His voice is calm, unhurried, neither theatrical nor cold. It flows over you like slow water. You learn to listen while you chew, to let words and food enter together, both meant to shape you. Outside these central rooms, the commandery spreads into work. You find the armory or the storage rooms where iron and order meet. There are racks, hooks, shelves, places for everything. Helmets, mail, shields, saddles, spare straps, tools for repair, oils for maintenance. The smell here is distinct: metal, leather, and the faint rancid sweetness of grease. Nothing is left to chance. A missing buckle is not a minor inconvenience. It is a potential failure in the moment when failure can kill. You're taught to check, to count, to place each object exactly where it belongs. You learn to run your fingers over worn leather, to notice cracks before they become breaks, to feel whether a strap will hold. You learn to listen for the dull sound of loose rivets. Attention becomes a habit. The stables feel like a different world, warmer and more alive. Horses are not simply animals here. They are partners in survival. They are wealth in motion, strength given muscle and breath. You step into the stable and the air changes immediately. It is thick with warmth, hay dust, and the steady sound of chewing. Horses turn their heads, watching you with eyes that reflect light softly. You hear them snort, a short burst of breath like a small storm. You feel the heat of their bodies when you stand close. Their coats are coarse beneath your palm, sometimes damp, sometimes dusty. You learn to groom them not only for cleanliness but for bonding, for trust. You clean hooves, lift heavy legs, scrape away stones and dirt. You carry water. You brush mane and tail until your arm aches. And in this repetitive care, you begin to understand something important. That strength is maintained through patience. Beyond the stables there are courtyards and small open spaces where sky becomes visible again. The commandery does not deny the outside world entirely. It frames it. It allows it in measured portions. In the yard you feel wind. You see clouds move above stone walls. You notice how light changes through the day. Pale in the morning, hard at noon, golden and slanted toward evening. Sometimes you catch the smell of rain before it arrives. Sometimes you hear distant voices beyond the walls, the ordinary world continuing, unaware or only half aware of the discipline held inside. And always, the bell. It is the commandery's voice, steady and unquestioned. It calls you to prayer, to work, to meals, to rest. It interrupts thought. It cuts through fatigue. It demands that you place the order above the body's wishes. Over time, you stop resenting it. Your body begins to anticipate it, as if the sound has been sewn into your nerves. The bell becomes the spine of the day, holding everything upright. You also begin to sense the hierarchy, not as a loud system of power, but as a quiet pattern. Who speaks first? Who gives instruction? Who receives it without comment? Who walks slightly ahead? Who stands slightly back? It is not humiliation, it is structure. You learn titles and roles through observation. The commander who oversees the house, the brothers who manage supplies, those who train others, those whose hands are skilled with repairs, those who keep accounts, those who ride out on errands. You see how each man's identity is less about his personality and more about his function. In the world outside, men try to be remembered. Here, men try to be useful. At first, you feel watched, not with suspicion but with attention. Your steps, your posture, your speed, your willingness to accept correction. The older brothers do not test you with clever traps. They test you with the ordinary. Can you rise without complaint? Can you eat what is given without craving more? Can you keep your eyes lowered when pride wants to look up? Can you accept a rebuke without defending yourself? Can you move through the day without needing to be noticed? The Commandery is a machine built to grind down unnecessary edges, and yet it does not feel cruel. It feels deliberate. There are moments, especially at first, when the sameness presses on you like a weight. The corridors look the same. The tasks repeat. The prayers return again and again, their words carved into your mouth. You may miss the small freedoms of ordinary life, choosing your own pace, speaking when you wish, sitting where you like, walking away from a room simply because you desire solitude. Here, solitude is rare, space is shared, time is shared, even fatigue feels communal. But then something subtle begins to happen. The Commandery starts to feel less like a prison and more like a shelter. Not a shelter from work, from cold, from hardship, those remain, but a shelter from chaos. The world beyond the walls is unpredictable. A harvest can fail, a lord can demand men for war, bandits can appear on the road, sickness can sweep through a village. Inside, life remains narrow but steady. The same bell, the same prayers, the same tasks, the same stone beneath your feet. Stability becomes a kind of quiet medicine. You begin to notice how this steadiness changes your mind. Your thoughts become fewer, less frantic. Your desires become simpler. You stop imagining an easier life because you stop feeding the imagination with constant choice. You begin to live from one hour to the next, letting the structure carry you. It is not that you become emotionless, it is that emotion no longer rules the day. And in small, almost unnoticed ways, belonging begins to replace unease. Not the belonging of laughter and intimate conversation, but the belonging of shared endurance. You recognize the same faces at prayer. You learn the sound of a particular brother's steps. You notice who coughs at night. You see who works without complaint, who tightens straps carefully, who speaks only when needed. The Commandery becomes a community that does not demand friendship to function. It demands reliability. As evening approaches, the stones release the day's stored warmth slowly, and the air in the courtyard cools again. Shadows lengthen. The chapel draws you back like a tide. Candles are lit. The last prayers of the day settle into the building's bones. You kneel, feeling the ache in your legs, the heaviness in your shoulders, the familiar hunger that never quite disappears. You listen to the voices around you, low and steady, and you realize that you are beginning to breathe in the same rhythm as the house itself. The Commandery does not promise peace. It teaches you how to contain yourself, and as you move through its corridors once more, as your hand brushes stone that is cold and indifferent, as your footsteps echo and fade, you understand that this place is shaping you quietly, without drama, with the patience of stone and the certainty of bells. You're being made ready, not with speeches, not with grand moments, but with walls, routine, silence, and the steady life inside the Commandery. Faith is no longer something you speak about. It is something you live inside. In the Commandery, belief is not expressed through enthusiasm or outward emotion. There are no raised voices, no dramatic confessions, no visible fervour meant to persuade or impress. Faith here is quiet, dense and constant, like the stone beneath your feet. It does not ask to be proven each day. It is assumed, the way gravity is assumed. From the moment you wake, faith frames your actions. You rise because God must be greeted before the world stirs. You pray not because you feel inspired, but because prayer orders the day. Words pass your lips even when your mind feels slow, even when your body aches, even when your thoughts resist stillness. The discipline of belief matters more than the warmth of belief. You begin to understand that faith here is an act of endurance. The chapel becomes the place where this endurance is most visible. You enter it multiple times a day, sometimes with attention, sometimes with fatigue, sometimes with a mind clouded by sleep or worry. The candles are always there, their flames never fully still. The walls listen without responding. You kneel, rise, kneel again. The repetition is deliberate. It wears down resistance. It teaches humility not through words but through posture. At first, prayer feels familiar. You know the words. You learned them as a child. They rise easily, shaped by memory rather than reflection. But over time, the familiarity deepens into something heavier. You begin to notice the weight of what you are saying. Requests for mercy, confessions of weakness, promises of obedience. These are not abstract ideas here. They describe your life exactly. You pray surrounded by other men, yet the experience feels intensely personal. Each brother carries his own fears into the chapel, his own doubts, his own past. You sense this without discussion. You feel it in the collective silence, in the way voices sometimes falter together, in the length of pauses between verses. No one asks what weighs on another's heart. It is understood that each man must carry it himself. Faith becomes the shared language of restraint. You learn that belief is not meant to lift you above fear, but to teach you how to stand within it. You pray knowing that you may be sent into danger. You pray knowing that suffering is not a sign of abandonment. You pray knowing that obedience may lead to death far from home, without recognition, without comfort. These thoughts do not disappear with prayer, they sit beside it. There are days when faith feels solid. On those days, the words flow easily. The discipline feels purposeful. The sacrifices feel meaningful. You sense a quiet alignment between your life and the vows you've taken. The rule feels just. The silence feels clean. The future feels held, even if it is unknown. But there are other days when prayer feels heavy and dry, when words fall flat against the stone and return unchanged, when your knees ache more sharply than usual, and the chapel feels colder, more distant. On those days, doubt does not arrive loudly. It does not challenge doctrine or belief directly. It whispers. It asks small questions. Why must this be so hard? Why does God require so much? Why silence when the heart longs to speak? You do not voice these questions. You barely acknowledge them. Yet they remain, hovering at the edge of thought, persistent, patient. Doubt is not punished here, but neither is it indulged. You learn quickly that faith is not measured by the absence of doubt, but by what you do while doubt is present. You kneel anyway. You pray anyway. You obey anyway. The act itself becomes the answer. Confession plays a quiet role in this inner struggle. You kneel before a priest, lower your voice, and speak of your failures, not only of actions, but of thoughts, of resentment, of pride, of weariness, of moments when you wished even briefly for another life. The words feel heavy as they leave you, yet lighter once spoken. You're reminded that weakness is expected, that holiness is not the absence of struggle, but the refusal to abandon the path. The symbols around you reinforce this understanding. The cross is everywhere. Not ornate, not jewelled, but plain, severe. It reminds you that suffering is not an accident of faith, but its centre. You're not asked to understand this fully. You are asked to accept it. Relics, when present, are treated with reverence, but without spectacle. They're reminders of lives endured, not miracles displayed. They speak of bodies broken, of persistence beyond comfort. They fit the Order's understanding of sanctity. Over time, faith begins to move inward. You stop thinking of God only as a distant judge or protector. He becomes a constant presence, watching without interruption, not only during prayer, but during work, silence, fatigue, irritation. You feel observed, not with cruelty, but with clarity. There is nowhere to hide, and strangely, this feels honest. This awareness changes your inner life. You become more attentive to intention. You notice the rise of pride before it shapes action. You catch irritation before it becomes speech. You learn to redirect thought, not forcefully, but firmly, like guiding a horse away from danger. This mental discipline is exhausting at first. Later, it becomes instinctive. Yet doubt never disappears entirely. It returns in moments of weakness, when illness spreads through the house, when a brother dies quietly in his sleep, when news arrives of defeat, of suffering, of loss far away. You pray for meaning, but meaning does not always present itself clearly. You begin to understand that faith, as lived here, is not about certainty. It is about loyalty. Loyalty to vows spoken once and renewed daily. Loyalty to a structure that holds you when understanding fails. Loyalty to a God who does not explain himself. At night, lying awake, you sometimes stare into darkness and wonder if this loyalty is enough. If obedience without clarity truly honors the divine. These thoughts do not resolve themselves. Eventually fatigue claims them, and in the morning the bell rings again. You rise, you pray, or you continue. Faith does not remove doubt from your life. It teaches you how to carry it without being consumed. And as you move through another day within stone walls and measured hours, you begin to realize that this quiet, demanding faith is shaping you as surely as any training of the body. Not into someone without fear, but into someone who walks forward even when fear remains. Doubt does not arrive as an enemy with a raised voice. It comes like a shadow that lengthens quietly at the end of the day. You notice it most in moments when the body is tired and the mind unguarded. After long hours of labour, after prayers spoken on aching knees, after days when silence feels heavier than usual. In these moments, questions slip in without asking permission. They do not deny God. They do not mock belief. They simply ask why. Why this life, chosen freely, must feel so narrow. Why sacrifice is praised, yet comfort seems forbidden. Why obedience is holy, even when it silences parts of you that once felt alive. You learn quickly that the Order does not offer answers to these questions. There are no debates, no philosophical discussions meant to soothe the restless mind. Instead, there is structure, routine, repetition, the expectation that you will continue to act faithfully even when feeling falters. This is the heart of Templar belief. Faith is not emotion. It is constancy. You see this most clearly in the older brothers, men whose faces are marked by sun, wind, and years of discipline. They pray without visible passion, without hesitation. Their movements in the chapel are economical, precise. They kneel, rise, bow their heads and return to their places as if guided by something deeper than conscious thought. You begin to understand that their faith has moved beyond feeling. It has settled into habit. This realization unsettles you at first. You wonder if habit cheapens belief, if repetition without emotion empties prayer of meaning. But as days pass, you begin to see another truth. That habit preserves faith when emotion cannot. On days when your heart feels distant, your body still knows what to do. Your lips still form the words. Your knees still touch stone. The act continues even when inspiration does not, and slowly you realize that this persistence itself is a form of devotion. There are moments when doubt sharpens. A brother falls ill suddenly, violently. His strength fades in days. You watch him grow quieter, thinner, his breath shallow. You pray for his recovery. Others do too. The prayers are sincere, disciplined, collective. He dies anyway. There is no outcry, no dramatic questioning. His body is prepared. His place in the dormitory is cleared. His tasks are reassigned. The bell rings as it always has. Life continues. You feel something twist inside you. Not anger, not disbelief, but a quiet, aching confusion. You wonder what the prayers were for. You wonder what obedience promises, if not protection. You kneel in the chapel and feel the stone colder than before. Words come more slowly. Your mind resists them, and still you pray. This is how doubt is carried here. Not argued with, not expelled, but endured. You're not asked to resolve the mystery of suffering. You're asked to remain faithful within it. Confession becomes more frequent during such times. You speak of bitterness, of frustration, of thoughts you would never voice elsewhere. The priest listens without surprise. He does not explain God's will. He reminds you of your vows, of humility, of endurance. He reminds you that faith is not a shield against pain, but a way through it. You leave confession feeling no sudden clarity, but you feel steadier. The symbols around you begin to take on deeper meaning. The cross no longer feels like a distant image of sacrifice. It feels uncomfortably close. You see it now not as a symbol of victory, but of obedience unto suffering, of silence in the face of injustice, of endurance without immediate reward. This understanding strips faith of softness, but it gives it weight. You begin to sense God not as a comforting presence, but as an uncompromising one. A presence that demands truth, even when truth hurts. A presence that watches not to punish, but to see whether you will remain faithful when comfort disappears. This awareness sharpens your inner life. You become more attentive to your thoughts. You catch resentment earlier. You notice how quickly pride rises when you perform well, how quickly despair follows failure. You learn to place these movements before God without expectation of immediate relief. Sometimes relief comes, often it does not. And so faith becomes quieter still. It shows itself not in moments of peace, but in moments of resistance overcome. When you rise though you wish to stay down. When you kneel though your knees burn. When you accept correction though it wounds your pride. When you obey, though you do not understand. These are the moments that define belief in the order. There are rare nights when doubt feels overwhelming, when the silence of the dormitory presses heavily, when the breathing of others feels distant, when you lie awake and imagine another life, a wife, a child, a home warmed by laughter rather than discipline. You do not dwell on these images, you let them pass. You remind yourself that such thoughts are not sins. They are memories of paths not taken. They lose their power when acknowledged without longing. Eventually exhaustion pulls you under. Morning comes again. The bell rings. The body rises. The soul follows, even if reluctantly. Over time you realize that faith here is not something you possess. It's something you practice. Daily, repeatedly, without certainty of reward. And strangely, this practice shapes you. You become less concerned with what you feel and more with what you do. Less focused on understanding God and more on remaining loyal to Him. The sharp edges of doubt dull, not because they disappear, but because you learn how to live with them. Faith and doubt cease to be opposites. They become companions on the same narrow path. As you move through the Commandery once more, feeling stone beneath your feet, hearing the bell call you onward, you understand that belief in this life is not meant to comfort you as you walk. It is meant to keep you walking. And so you continue, not with perfect certainty, not with unshakable confidence, but with a quiet, disciplined loyalty that endures even when clarity does not. This is the faith of a Templar, not triumphant, not gentle, but unbroken. War does not begin on the battlefield. It begins here in repetition, in fatigue, in the quiet shaping of the body long before it is tested by fear. Training enters your life without ceremony. There is no declaration, no clear boundary between preparation and ordinary labour. One day, you are simply expected to do more, to move faster, to carry heavier weight, to endure longer without complaint. The transition is subtle but relentless. Your body learns before your mind does. You wake already tired. Muscles ache from the day before and from the day before that. The cold of dawn tightens joints. Fingers feel stiff as you fasten straps and buckles. You stretch instinctively, not to loosen the body, but to prepare it for strain. Prayer still comes first. You kneel with sore legs, aware that faith and war are not separate here. One prepares the soul, the other the flesh, and both demand the same discipline. When you rise, the day turns toward training without pause. The yard becomes your classroom. It is an open space of packed earth or stone, surrounded by walls that reflect sound and heat. In summer, the sun presses down mercilessly. In winter, wind cuts through wool and mail. There is no season in which training becomes gentle. You begin with the basics: posture, balance, grip. You're taught how to stand so that weight is distributed correctly, how to keep your feet grounded without becoming slow. You learn how to hold a weapon not with brute force, but with economy. Tension wastes energy. Control preserves it. At first, your movements are clumsy. Your body remembers the habits of ordinary labour, lifting, carrying, bending. But this is different. Every motion here has consequence. A poorly placed foot would mean death in combat. A careless grip could cost you a hand. Correction comes constantly. A sharp word, a tap against your arm or leg, a repeated command until the movement is precise. No praise follows improvement. Improvement is expected. Weapons are introduced gradually. You begin with wood, blunted shapes that mimic swords and lances. They feel awkward, unbalanced, unforgiving. Your wrists ache from unfamiliar strain. Your shoulders burn. Sweat runs into your eyes, stinging, blurring vision. You are taught to strike without rage. Wildness is discouraged. Control is praised. A blow must be placed, not thrown. You learn to pull back at the right moment, to conserve strength, to anticipate rather than react. You train alone, then with others. Paired drills test patience as much as strength. You learn to read your opponent's body. The shift of weight, the tightening of a shoulder, the hesitation before movement. These signs matter more than speed. They tell you what is about to happen before it happens. Horses soon enter your training. At first you care for them more than you ride them. grooming, feeding, cleaning hooves. You learn their moods, their fears, their limits. A horse is not a tool. It is a living creature that must trust you completely, even in chaos. When you finally mount regularly, your body protests anew. Riding strains muscles you did not know you had. Your legs ache from gripping. Your back stiffens. You learn to balance without tension, to move with the animal rather than against it. Falling is common. Bruises appear without comment. You're taught to mount quickly, to ride at speed, to stop suddenly. Later comes riding with weapons. The lance feels heavy, awkward at first. Your arm trembles under its weight. Keeping it steady while guiding a horse requires concentration that exhausts you faster than running ever did. Mistakes are corrected immediately. There is no patience for carelessness here. Armour is introduced slowly. You do not begin with full mail. That would break you too quickly. Instead, you add weight in stages. A padded garment, then mail at the shoulders, then arms, then legs. Each addition changes how your body moves, how you breathe, how heat builds beneath metal. You sweat constantly. The smell of iron and leather clings to you. Your clothing is often damp, heavy, uncomfortable. Chafing becomes normal. You learn where straps rub, where rings pinch, where pressure accumulates. You adjust. You endure. Training days are long. There is little distinction between work and preparation for war. Carrying stones strengthens the back. Digging builds endurance. Lifting grain sacks trains the arms. Everything is repurposed into readiness. Meals do not increase to compensate. You eat what is given. Hunger sharpens. Fatigue deepens. Sleep comes faster at night, heavier, less dream-filled. The body repairs itself reluctantly, knowing it will be strained again at dawn. There are moments when you doubt your capacity. Your breath shortens. Your arms shake. Your vision narrows. You wonder if your body will fail you when it matters most. These thoughts rise uninvited during the hardest moments, when effort feels endless. You're not encouraged verbally. Instead, you are watched. Older brothers observe quietly. They notice who persists without complaint, who recovers quickly, who adapts. They also notice who resists internally, who grows angry, who pushes recklessly. Training is as much about temperament as strength. You learn restraint, you learn to conserve energy, to rest when permitted, to drink slowly, to breathe deliberately. These small habits accumulate, making the difference between endurance and collapse. Gradually, almost imperceptibly, your body changes. Muscles harden, movements become economical, balance improves. Pain becomes a familiar background rather than a warning. You still feel it, but it no longer commands your attention. You realize that training is not meant to make you fearless. It is meant to make you functional under fear. Every drill, every repetition, every correction is shaping a body that will respond even when the mind hesitates. You're being taught to act before panic can take hold. As evening approaches, training does not end with triumph. It ends with exhaustion. You clean weapons. You tend to horses. You store equipment carefully. There is no dramatic release of tension. No cheering. Only the quiet satisfaction of having endured another day. When you kneel for evening prayer, your body aches deeply. Muscles throb. Bruises bloom beneath cloth. Your breathing is slow, heavy. And yet, beneath the fatigue, something steady has begun to form. Your body is learning its purpose, not to dominate, not to impress, but to endure violence without falling apart. This is how war begins for you, not with blood, not with shouting, but with discipline carved patiently into flesh, one exhausting day at a time. Leaving the commandery does not feel like freedom. It feels like exposure. The gate opens with a sound you know well. Iron scraping against iron, wood shifting under its own weight. You pass beneath the arch slowly, aware of the thickness of the walls you're leaving behind. Inside them, life was narrow, disciplined, protected by routine. Outside, the world spreads wide and uncertain, indifferent to vows and bells alike. The road begins quietly. At first it is familiar ground, fields you have seen from a distance, paths worn smooth by carts and feet, villages clustered around churches whose bells echo faintly as you pass. The smell of earth, manure, wood smoke, and damp straw accompanies you. Dogs bark, children stare, adults pause in their work to watch you go by. You feel their eyes on you. The white mantle draws attention even when you try to remain unnoticed. To some, it is a symbol of protection. To others, of power. To others still, of fear or resentment. You do not respond to these gazes. You walk steadily, eyes forward, pace measured. The road stretches. Hours pass, marked not by bells, but by the movement of the sun. Your body adjusts to a different rhythm. You walk for long stretches without speaking. Conversation is limited, practical, subdued. Words are saved for necessity. Silence returns naturally, filling the space between footsteps. You carry little. Your possessions fit easily into saddlebags or packs. Everything has been weighed, chosen, stripped of excess. The weight you feel most is not from what you carry, but from the uncertainty ahead. On the road there is no familiar routine to hold you. Each day must be shaped as it comes. The surface beneath your feet changes constantly. Packed earth becomes loose gravel. Gravel becomes mud. Mud dries into dust that coats your boots and clings to your clothing. Rain turns paths treacherous, forcing careful steps. Cold stiffens joints. Heat drains strength. There is no shelter guaranteed at the end of the day. You begin to understand the vulnerability of travel. Bandits are not always visible. Danger rarely announces itself. You scan tree lines. You watch bends in the road. You notice places where silence feels unnatural, where birds have fled. Your training sharpens your awareness, but it does not erase risk. At night you seek shelter where you can. Sometimes it's a village willing to receive you, a barn floor, a corner near a hearth. Sometimes it is open ground, a camp made quickly, fire kept small. You sleep lightly, half aware of every sound. Wind through leaves, an animal moving nearby, the shift of a brother beside you. Sleep on the road is never deep. You eat what you carry, supplemented when possible by what is offered. Bread hardens quickly, cheese dries, water is precious. When you find a stream, you drink carefully, aware of illness. Hunger becomes sharper on the road, less predictable. You learn to accept it without complaint. Days blend together. You measure distance by fatigue rather than miles, by the soreness in your legs, by the weight of the pack on your shoulders, by the gradual wearing away of the initial excitement of departure. The road teaches humility. You pass peasants bent over fields, their lives rooted to the soil. You pass merchants guarding wagons heavy with goods. You pass pilgrims, their faces marked by hope and fear, walking toward distant shrines with blistered feet and fragile faith. Each life brushes against yours briefly, then disappears. You do not linger. Your purpose pulls you onward. As the land changes, so do the dangers. Forests grow denser, paths narrow. In some regions, law feels distant, thin. You ride or walk more cautiously. Weapons remain close. Hands stay near reins or hilts. You do not seek conflict, but you are prepared for it. Sometimes danger never comes. Sometimes it brushes past. A group of men watching from a hill, a sudden movement in the trees, a shouted word in a language you do not understand. Your body tenses, breath shortens, then the moment passes, unresolved, leaving tension behind like a residue. You continue. Eventually the road leads to water. At first, rivers. Broad, slow-moving, reflecting sky and cloud. You cross by bridge when possible, by ford when not. Water numbs legs. Current pushes. You brace yourself, lean forward, feel the pull of it against your body. Crossing feels like a small victory each time. Then, one day the land opens, the air changes. You smell salt before you see the sea, a sharpness that catches in your throat. Wind carries cries of birds you do not know. The horizon flattens. The sky feels larger, more exposed, and there it is. Water without boundary, moving endlessly, indifferent to prayer or preparation. The sea unsettles you. It does not respond to discipline the way stone does. It shifts constantly. It reflects light harshly. It hides depth beneath surface motion. You feel small before it, aware that training on land offers little protection here. Ships wait at anchor. They creak and sway, alive in a way buildings are not. Wood groans, ropes strain, canvas snaps in the wind. The smell is overwhelming. Salt, tar, fish, wet wood, sweat. You step aboard carefully, testing the deck beneath your feet. It moves. The first sensation is disorientation. Your body resists the motion instinctively. Balance learned on solid ground falters. Your stomach tightens. Some men grow pale, others retch over the side without shame. The sea humbles quickly. Days at sea stretch strangely. Time loses its familiar markers. The sun rises and sets, but the space between feels distorted. Work is constant. Lines must be checked. Sails adjusted. Water rationed. There is little privacy, little comfort. Sleep comes in fragments. The sound of waves against the hull becomes constant, invasive. The air is damp. Clothing never fully dries. Cold seeps in at night. Heat presses down during the day. The ship smells of bodies, cargo, and confinement. Prayer continues. You pray on a deck that shifts beneath your knees. You pray with wind stealing words from your mouth. You pray knowing that no wall, no training yard, no formation can hold back the sea if it turns violent. Storms arrive without warning. The sky darkens. Wind rises. Waves grow taller, heavier, striking the hull with force that rattles bone. Men shout orders. Ropes burn hands. Sails strain. Water spills over the deck. You cling, brace, obey. Fear sharpens everything. In these moments, faith feels raw. There is no illusion of control, no sense that strength alone will save you. You do what you're told. You endure. You pray not for comfort, but for survival. When the storm passes, exhaustion follows. The sea calms reluctantly. The ship settles. Damage is assessed. Silence returns slowly. Men move carefully, quietly, as if afraid to provoke the water again. You learn respect, not admiration, not trust. Respect. The sea is crossed, not mastered. Weeks may pass like this. Land disappears entirely. The horizon remains empty. You feel suspended between worlds, no longer belonging to where you came from, not yet arrived where you're going. This in-between state weighs on the mind. Doubt surfaces easily here. So does introspection. You think of the commandery, of stone walls, of bells, of routine. You realize how much those boundaries held you, how exposed you feel without them. The road and the sea offer no structure beyond what you carry within yourself, and slowly you understand the purpose of this journey. It is not merely to move you from one place to another. It is to test whether the discipline carved into you will hold when the walls fall away. As the ship continues onward, cutting through water that seems endless, you stand on deck and feel the wind press against your face. Salt dries on your skin. Your eyes scan the horizon automatically, though there is nothing to see. You are far from home now, far from certainty. And yet, beneath the movement, beneath the exposure, something steady remains. The habits of discipline, the weight of vows, the quiet endurance learned through repetition. The road and the sea strip you down, removing the shelter of familiarity, and what remains is the true measure of what the order has made of you. Not a man at ease, but a man who continues forward, even when the ground itself refuses to stay still. Battle does not begin with a trumpet. It begins earlier, long before the first blow, in a tightening of the air, in the way men speak less and listen more, in the way every small sound seems suddenly important. Even before you see an enemy, you feel the approach of violence as if it were a change in weather. There is a day when the routine of travel shifts. The pace becomes more deliberate. The line tightens. Weapons are checked more often. Straps are pulled again and again, not because they are loose, but because hands need something to do. You notice men swallowing more frequently, lips drying, eyes scanning the horizon with a patient intensity that feels different from ordinary caution. You may be near a fortress, a road, a pass, or a stretch of land known to be contested. The details vary, but the atmosphere is always the same, a quiet gathering of attention, like a tide drawing back before it returns. Orders come briefly, a word from a superior, a gesture, a shift in formation. You obey without question, because in this moment the rule is not only spiritual discipline, it is survival. You are placed where you are needed, not where you prefer. Your body accepts the position, your mind narrowing to what is directly in front of you. Then comes the waiting. This is the part few imagine correctly. In stories, battle is constant motion, charging and clashing, heroes shouting their names. In truth, there is often a long stretch of stillness, heavy and thick, where nothing happens, and yet everything is happening inside you. You stand, you breathe, you listen. The sun may be bright, reflecting off metal so sharply it stings the eyes. Or the sky may be grey, wind tugging at cloth and banner. You may smell dust, or damp earth, or the distant scent of animals. Sometimes you catch the smell of smoke, faint, drifting from somewhere you cannot see. Your armour presses against your body, mail drags at shoulders, a padded gambeson holds warmth too well. Sweat begins before you move. It gathers under layers, dampening cloth, making everything heavier. Your helmet, if you wear one, narrows the world to a smaller frame. Breathing becomes louder, closer, as if you are breathing inside a confined space. You feel your heart, not in the romantic way people speak of courage, but physically, beating against ribbon straps, steady but insistent. You try to keep it from accelerating because you know what panic does. It makes you waste energy. It makes you see less. It makes you act too soon. Training rises like an old voice inside you. Breathe, conserve, wait. You grip your weapon and feel the familiar shape of wood and metal beneath your fingers. The grip is slightly damp. Your palms sweat. You adjust your hands once, then force yourself to stop fidgeting. Movement is a kind of confession. It reveals nerves. Around you, your brothers are quiet. You sense their presence more than you look at them. You hear the faint jingle of mail as someone shifts weight. The soft scrape of a boot against dirt. A swallowed cough. These sounds feel loud because the mind is hungry for any proof that time is still passing. Then you hear it, not always clearly at first. A distant murmur, a low vibration of many feet, the faint clatter of metal. It comes and goes with the wind. You strain to identify it, and in that straining you feel your own fear sharpen into focus. Your mouth is dry, your tongue feels thick, you swallow and taste dust. The first sight of the enemy is sometimes anticlimactic. A line on a ridge, movement between trees, figures emerging from heat haze. Not monsters, not demons, men. Human shapes with weapons and armour of their own. You see banners or colours, perhaps, but more often you see only motion and threat. In that moment, the mind tries to make sense of everything at once. How many? How close? Which direction? Who is with you? Where is the nearest cover? There is no time for full understanding, only for obeying the next command. You may be ordered into formation, to hold a line, to protect a group, to ride forward, to wait for a signal. The order's discipline becomes visible now, men moving together without argument, without confusion, as if the formation were a single creature adjusting its stance. And still, there is another stretch of waiting. The enemy advances, or you advance, or both. The distance between you closes slowly, then suddenly. This is the moment when the body begins to change. Adrenaline arrives like heat in the blood. Hands feel both stronger and less precise. Time seems to thicken. Some sounds become loud, others vanish. You may notice details you never expected to notice. The glint of light on a blade, the way a horse's nostrils flare, the tremor in a man's arm holding a spear. Your breath shortens. You force it to slow. Breathe. Conserve, hold, then impact. If you're on foot, the first clash is not elegant. It is a collision of bodies and metal, of momentum and fear. Shields meet, spears thrust, blades glance off armor with ringing shocks that travel through your bones. The air fills with noise, shouting, grunting, the sharp crack of wood, the scrape of steel. If you are mounted, the sensation is different but no less brutal. The horse surges beneath you, powerful, alive, its muscles working like a storm. The ground rushes past, wind tears at your mantle. The world narrows to the line ahead. When the moment of contact comes, it is like striking a wall that strikes back. Your arm jolts, your shoulder burns, your balance teeters. The horse's motion continues, carrying you through chaos whether you feel ready or not. There is no single battle the way stories present it. There are dozens of small emergencies happening at once. A man falls, a horse screams, a weapon slips, a strap breaks, a shout rises. Command or panic, you cannot tell. You're forced to act in fragments, strike and step back, brace, turn, look. You try to keep formation, but formation is constantly threatened by the simple reality of bodies colliding. The ground becomes uneven with trampling. Dust rises until it coats your lips and lashes. Sweat runs into your eyes, stinging. You blink hard, trying to clear vision without losing awareness. Fear is everywhere, not always as panic, often as tension, as hyper-alertness, as a tightness in the stomach that never releases. You feel it in your own body and you sense it in others. Even the bravest men feel fear. Courage is not its absence. Courage is moving while it remains. You discover quickly that noise is overwhelming. The mind cannot hold it all. It selects, discards, focuses. You may hear your own breathing louder than any scream. You may hear the ring of your weapon striking armor like a bell that drowns out everything else. Or you may hear nothing clearly, only a muffled roar as if you were underwater. Commands become hard to interpret. You watch for signals, for movement of leaders, for patterns in the crowd. You rely on training. Stay close, protect your side. Do not chase alone. Do not break line. These rules repeat in your mind like prayer. Stay, hold, obey. And then you face the most difficult truth. The enemy is not a faceless mass. He is a man close enough to see. You see eyes behind a helmet. You see a mouth open in exertion, teeth bared, breath visible in cold air or glistening in heat. You see fear mirrored back at you, and in that instant, something inside you wants to hesitate because the mind recognizes the shared humanity, and humanity complicates action. But hesitation is dangerous. The body acts. You strike because you must. You push because you must. You protect the brother beside you because he is your responsibility. You are not here to indulge your inner conflict. You are here to do what the vows demand. The reality of battle is not heroism. It is work under terror. It is the repeated act of choosing function over feeling again and again, until the body is exhausted and the mind is narrowed to the next breath, the next step, the next movement that keeps you alive. You begin to feel pain without understanding its source. A blow to the arm that numbs fingers, a shock to the ribs that steals breath, a cut somewhere that you do not notice until warmth spreads beneath cloth. You cannot assess every injury. You cannot stop. The body continues because stopping invites death. Time becomes strange. A few minutes can feel like an hour. An hour can pass like a few breaths. You lose sense of where you started, of how far you have moved. The battlefield is a shifting map of confusion. Smoke may drift in, blinding. Dust may rise higher. Sun may glare off helmets until the world feels white and harsh. Somewhere someone screams a prayer, not poetic, not calm, a raw plea. You feel the urge to do the same, but your mouth is too dry, your breath too precious. Your prayer becomes internal, reduced to a single thought repeated like a heartbeat. Steady me, steady me, steady me. And then, as suddenly as it began, the intensity shifts. An enemy line breaks, or yours does, or both. Movement changes direction. The crowd loosens. The pressure lessens for a moment. You find space to breathe deeper. You realize you have been holding your jaw clenched so tightly it aches. You look around, trying to understand what is happening. Men are scattered now. The clean idea of formation is blurred. There are bodies on the ground, horses moving, riderless, eyes wide, mouths foaming, weapons abandoned, shields cracked. The air is thick with dust, sweat, and something else. Something metallic and unmistakable. Blood. Not in cinematic splashes, but in stains, smears, dark patches soaking into earth. The smell of it mixes with everything, turning the battlefield into a place your senses will remember long after your mind tries to forget. You feel a wave of nausea, not only from the smell, but from the realization that this is the true world behind the symbols, the red cross on white cloth, the vows, the prayers. They lead here to this infusion, to this noise, to this human closeness of violence. Yet you are still standing. And because you are still standing, you must keep moving. Battle does not ask you how you feel about it. It demands action again and again until it is over, or until you are. When the noise of battle fades, what remains is the body, not the idea of it, not the symbol. The fragile, wounded, exhausted body that must still be carried forward. In the hours that follow combat, the Order reveals another of its faces, quieter, slower, and no less demanding. There are no speeches to mark the end of violence, no sudden release. The work simply changes form. You are alive. That fact settles gradually, like breath returning after a long descent. At first you are aware only of exhaustion, a deep pervasive weariness that seeps into bone and thought alike. Your limbs feel heavy, unresponsive. Your head throbs faintly. Every movement reminds you that your body has been pushed beyond its comfort. Then pain begins to separate itself. A sharp ache in the shoulder, a burning line along the forearm, a dull pressure in the ribs. You take inventory silently, the way you were taught. Which injuries bleed, which throb, which can wait. You do not dramatize them, not even inwardly. Pain is information now, nothing more. Around you others do the same. Men sit or lie where they can, armour loosened, helmets removed, faces streaked with sweat and dust. Some stare into space, some bend over their wounds with focused attention. A few move already among the fallen, compelled by habit rather than instruction. This is where brotherhood becomes tangible, not in words, not in vows, but in hands. You help remove armour from a man whose fingers shake too much to manage straps. You support another as he limps towards shade. You tear cloth without hesitation to bind a wound, ignoring how it ruins the garment. Possessions are irrelevant here. Bodies matter. There is no hierarchy in injury. A commander bleeds like any other man. A novice cries out as sharply as a veteran. Pain does not respect rank, and so care is given where it is needed, without ceremony, without waiting for orders. The sounds around you change. Groans replace shouts. Short cries replace battle calls. The clink of armour gives way to the soft rip of cloth, the splash of water, the murmured counting of breaths. Someone fetches water. Someone else gathers bandages. Someone begins preparing a place for the worst wounded, choosing ground that is as clean and shaded as possible. The movement is purposeful, almost instinctive, as if the order has practiced this moment countless times, because it has. You kneel beside a brother you know well. His face is pale beneath dust and sweat. His eyes are unfocused. Blood darkens the cloth at his side. You press down gently, firmly where you were taught. He gasps, then grits his teeth. He does not scream. Pride or discipline. You cannot tell which holds him back. You speak to him quietly, not prayers, not encouragement, simple facts. Breathe. Hold still, it will pass. Whether this is true no longer matters. What matters is that your voice anchors him, that he knows he's not alone in this moment when fear would gladly take over. Others work nearby. A brother skilled with healing examines wounds carefully, fingers probing gently but firmly. He smells of blood and herbs. His expression is focused, detached, but not cold. He has seen this many times. He knows which injuries can be treated and which are beyond help. Sometimes he shakes his head. When he does, the air seems to thicken. A man nearby closes his eyes slowly. Someone makes the sign of the cross. Words are spoken quietly. There is no argument, no denial. The order has taught acceptance alongside endurance. You feel a tightening in your chest when this happens. Grief rises, but it does not overflow. There is no room for it to spill. There will be time later perhaps, or perhaps there will not. For now the living require attention. As the wounded are tended, the fallen are gathered. This task is done carefully. Bodies are turned gently with respect. Armour is removed if possible, not to be taken, but to ease the body. Faces are cleaned of blood and dust. Eyes are closed. Hands are arranged. Small acts performed without haste restore a measure of dignity stolen by violence. You recognize faces among the dead, men you trained beside, men you travelled with, men whose breathing you listened to in the dormitory. The knowledge settles unevenly, catching unexpectedly. A memory flashes, a shared meal, a brief exchange on the road, a familiar posture in prayer. These memories do not overwhelm you all at once. They arrive one by one, quietly, each adding weight. There is no weeping, not because grief is forbidden, but because shock still holds it at bay. The body protects itself first. Tears will come later, when the danger has fully passed, when the mind is no longer occupied with immediate survival. As evening approaches, fires are lit. Small, controlled, used for warmth, for boiling water, for light. The smell of smoke mixes with that of blood and earth. The sky darkens slowly, indifferent to what has occurred below. Food is prepared if possible. Eating feels strange at first. Your stomach tightens at the thought, but hunger asserts itself eventually, blunt and insistent. You eat because you must. The body demands fuel. Chewing feels mechanical. Taste barely registers. You sit among others, sharing space without conversation. Words would feel excessive. In this shared silence, something subtle happens. You begin to feel the presence of the Order not as an institution, but as a network of lives bound together by necessity. Each man depends on the others not for comfort, but for continuation. You realize how quickly everything would collapse without this mutual care. Night deepens. The wounded sleep fitfully. Some mutter in pain. Others lie still, breathing shallowly. Those able to stand take turns keeping watch, tending fires, checking bandages. There is no formal assignment. Responsibility circulates naturally. You take a watch when it is your turn. Standing in the dim light, you feel the full weight of exhaustion. Your body sways slightly. Muscles protest. You lean on a spear or sword to steady yourself. The sounds of the night feel amplified. Insects, distant animals, the crackle of firewood. You think of the Commandery, of stone walls and predictable nights, of bells marking hours, of sleep taken in safety. Those memories feel distant now, almost unreal. Out here, everything depends on vigilance and cooperation. A wounded brother stirs. You kneel beside him, offering water. He drinks with difficulty, spilling some. You do not rush him. Time moves differently now. There is no schedule to keep beyond survival. He looks at you, eyes cloudy, and grips your wrist weakly. "Brother," he whispers. It is not a conversation, it is an acknowledgement. You nod once, firmly, and stay until his grip loosens. This is brotherhood. Not the warmth of friendship, not the comfort of shared stories, but the unspoken agreement to remain present in pain, to share the burden of survival, and to carry one another forward when strength falters. As the night stretches on, you feel yourself thinning, not physically, though your body is drained, but emotionally. There is little room left for reflection. The world has narrowed again, this time not by walls or routine, but by necessity. You focus on small things, the rhythm of breathing, the warmth of the fire, the pressure of the ground beneath your feet. Gradually, the initial shock gives way to a deeper fatigue. When you finally lie down, wrapped in cloak or blanket, you do not dream. Sleep takes you heavily, completely, as if pulling you under dark water. And even in sleep, the presence of others remains, breathing around you, movement nearby, life continuing. Brotherly care does not end with the last blow of battle. It begins there, and it continues through the long hours after, when the true cost of violence reveals itself, and the Order must hold itself together not with swords, but with hands steady enough to tend the wounded and hearts disciplined enough to endure loss. This, too, is part of your life as a Templar. Death is never far from you, not as an abstraction, not as a distant fear reserved for battle alone, but as a quiet presence that walks beside every day of this life. You feel it in the discipline of the rule, in the vows that stripped away future generations, in the acceptance that your name may end with you. Long before the body weakens, the Order has already taught you how to live with the idea of an ending. As the years pass, you begin to notice how death changes shape. In youth it feels sharp and dramatic, something sudden, violent, loud, a fall in battle, a blade striking true, a moment that divides life cleanly into before and after. Later it becomes slower, more patient. You see it in the men who rise less quickly in the morning, in the way joints ache longer after prayer, in the pauses taken before mounting a horse, in the careful way older brothers conserve energy, not from fear but from experience. Aging is quiet in the order. There's no ceremony for it. No recognition beyond practical adjustment. An older brother may train less and supervise more. He may be assigned lighter duties. He may spend more time in prayer, more time watching rather than acting. His authority often grows even as his body weakens. You learn to respect this, not because age commands reverence automatically, but because endurance earns it. A man who has lived long within this discipline carries something weightier than strength: memory. These men remember brothers long gone, campaigns forgotten by the world, roads walked when they were younger and less certain. Their silence is full, not empty. You begin to imagine yourself among them. The thought is unsettling, not because you fear death itself, but because you sense how thoroughly this life reshapes your relationship to it. You do not imagine a dramatic final stand. You imagine something quieter, a sickness that lingers, a wound that never fully heals, a body that simply, one day, no longer answers. Illness visits the order without preference. Fever spreads silently, a cough deepens, an infection takes hold. You watch strong men grow weak in days, their energy draining away despite care and prayer. You sit beside them, offering water, wiping sweat from their brows, listening to breaths grow shallow. There is fear in these moments, not panic, but awareness. You understand how little control you truly have. Training does not stop illness. Discipline does not guarantee recovery. Faith does not always intervene in ways you can see. And yet the response is always the same: care, presence, acceptance. The dying are not abandoned. A brother is never left alone if it can be helped. Someone sits with him, prays softly, offers what comfort remains. Words are few. Touch becomes more important than speech. A hand held, a shoulder supported. The knowledge that even at the end the order surrounds him. When death comes, it is rarely dramatic. A breath that does not return, a chest that stills, a body that relaxes at last. The moment feels intimate, almost fragile. Those present bow their heads. Prayers are spoken quietly. The body is treated with care, just as it was after battle. Cleaned, arranged, prepared. Death here is not denied. But it is not sensationalized either. The burial follows ritual. If the body can be buried where it lies, a grave is dug. The earth is turned by brothers who know that one day others may do the same for them. If the body must be transported, it is done with respect, not haste. The dead are not burdens, they are part of the order's story. Prayers are spoken again. Familiar words, repeated countless times across generations. You take comfort in their constancy. These prayers have outlived kings and wars. They will outlive you as well. After burial, life resumes. This is perhaps the hardest part. The bell rings, prayer continues, work is reassigned, the absence remains, but it does not halt the rhythm. You feel the space left behind, an empty bed, a missing presence in formation, but the structure holds. At first, this feels harsh. Then gradually you understand its necessity. If every death shattered the order could not survive. Continuation is not disrespect. It is endurance. Memory takes a quieter form. Names are spoken during prayer. Stories are recalled occasionally, not as entertainment, but as reminders. He rode well. He was steady under pressure. He never complained. These simple phrases carry weight. They are how men are remembered here, not for glory, but for reliability. You begin to think about how you will be remembered. The thought is fleeting at first, then persistent. Not whether your name will be known widely. You know it will not. Not whether songs will be sung. They will not be. You wonder whether someone will say you were dependable, that you held your place, that you did not break when it mattered. This becomes your measure. As age continues its quiet work, your body offers reminders. Recovery takes longer. Fatigue settles more deeply. Pain lingers. You adapt without complaint. You adjust your pace. You listen to your limits more carefully. Pride has long since been worn away by discipline. There is no shame in acknowledging decline. What remains constant is duty. You still rise for prayer, still follow the rule, still serve where you can. The shape of service changes, but the core does not. This continuity gives your life coherence even as strength fades. Death, you realize, has been present all along. Not only at the end, but in the vows that renounced another life, in the discipline that narrowed your choices, in the acceptance that personal legacy would be replaced by collective memory. And yet this awareness does not darken your days. It clarifies them. You no longer rush. You no longer hoard time. You no longer fear insignificance. Your life has been shaped to fit within something larger, and that larger thing will continue after you are gone. This thought, once unsettling, becomes a source of peace. As you move through the later year of service, you watch younger brothers arrive, uncertain, restless, full of untested strength. You see yourself in them. You do not advise unless asked. You lead by example, by steadiness, by silence. One day, without announcement, you realize that you have become what you once observed, an older brother carrying memory rather than ambition, offering presence rather than instruction. And in this role you understand that death is not the opposite of life here. It is its completion, not an enemy to be defeated, but a certainty to be met with the same discipline, faith, and quiet endurance that shaped every day before it. Your body will fail. Your name may fade, but the order, the rhythm, the memory of service will continue, carried by others who walk the same narrow path. And in that continuity you find rest, not because you will be remembered, but because you belonged. The world around you begins to soften, the stone walls, the dust of roads, the smell of iron and wax, the sound of distant bells. All of it slowly loosens its grip. The weight of armor fades from your shoulders. The discipline that once structured every breath grows lighter, quieter, as if gently releasing you. You have walked the full path of a Templar. You have risen before dawn and knelt on cold stone. You have eaten plain bread in silence and slept among brothers without privacy. You have trained your body to endure fatigue and pain, and your mind to obey when doubt whispered. You have crossed long roads and restless seas, faced fear without fleeing, and learned what violence truly demands. You have cared for wounded brothers, carried the dead, and watched memory replace presence. And at the end, you have accepted a life that dissolves quietly into something larger than itself. This world was narrow, demanding, and unforgiving. Yet within its strict limits, it offered clarity. Every day had purpose. Every action carried weight. Every man knew what was expected of him. You were never promised comfort. You were never promised safety. You were only promised a place within the order, and the strength to endure as long as you remained faithful to it. As you return now to the present, you may notice how different your own world feels. how full it is of choices, how loud it is, how rarely silence is allowed to settle, and perhaps just for a moment you will carry with you something from that other life. A slower breath, a steadier rhythm, a sense that endurance, not speed, is what truly carries a person through time. You have lived for a while in the skin of a Templar. You have shared his discipline, his fears, his quiet loyalties, and now gently you may let him go. Thank you for travelling through history tonight. If this journey brought you calm, you are welcome to subscribe so you may continue to drift through other nights of the past. You may also leave a quiet comment, sharing where you are listening from before rest takes you fully. And if you wish, you can like the video, a small silent gesture before sleep. The bells fade, the night deepens, and you may rest.